Hello, everyone. Today I will be presenting about Alfie Kohn, advocate for progressive education. We'll be talking about his biography, some key concepts, and classroom application. So this is Alfie Kohn, still alive today. He is 66 years old. He's a prominent American author and lecturer. He's known for his progressive views on education and parenting and human behavior. He was born on October 15th, 1957 in Miami Beach, Florida, and Kohn attended Brown University and earned a master's degree from the University of Chicago. His career has been dedicated to challenging the conventional wisdom and advocating for practices that foster intrinsic motivation and genuine learning among kids. He's published many, many, many books. This is just a handful of them that I was able to gather off of his websites, but he's got Schooling Beyond Measure, another unorthodox essays about education, The Myth of the Spoiled Child, Coddled Kids, Helicopter Parents, and Other Phony Crises, Feel Bad Education, and other contrarian essays on children and schooling, The Homework Myth, Why Our Kids Get Too Much of a Bad Thing, Conditional Parenting, Moving from Awards and Punishment to Love and Reason, What Does It Mean to Be Well Educated, and more essays on standards, grading, and other follies, and The Case Against Standardized Testing, Raising the Scores, Ruining the Schools. This is just a handful of the books he's published. He also has hundreds of papers published as well. So he's a very well-written and well-acknowledged author. Some of the theories that Alfie Kohn discusses in his books are the theories of intrinsic versus extrinsic motivation, going beyond traditional discipline, constructivist learning and how to implement it, and what he calls unconditional parenting, which we'll talk about in a second. When discussing intrinsic and extrinsic motivation, Kohn argues that the extrinsic rewards, such as grades and praise, undermine intrinsic motivation, which is something that we've covered in other classes in this education program of kind of challenging the traditional models of rewards and punishment. He advocates for student environments that nurture students' natural curiosity. His next concept, beyond discipline, discusses how he opposes traditional discipline methods that rely on punishment and rewards, suggesting that instead, teachers and parents should focus on collaborative learning and a caring classroom community that emphasizes communication over hard and fast discipline. He's a big proponent of constructivist learning, and he supports an approach where students construct knowledge through more meaningful means like activities and hands-on group work rather than just passively receiving information like the traditional model of the teacher standing in front of the class and explaining all of the content to the students. He also supports what he calls unconditional parenting. In his parenting work, he emphasizes that unconditional love and support helps avoid manipulating tactics like reward and punishment programs. And he advocates for parents to communicate openly and honestly with their children and to be active listeners to their children to hear their concerns and to help them work through their problems without resorting to hard and fast discipline right out of the gate. When it comes to implementing some of these theories, there's a few strategies that a teacher can take on. Those being fostering intrinsic motivation, building community, encouraging reflection, and constructive discipline. When considering fostering intrinsic motivation, he means to create learning experiences that are relevant and engaging to students' interests. This is something that we've discussed in, now that I think about it, almost every class that I've had at Roberts so far in this education program is tailoring the activities and classwork to student interests to increase engagement. So this could involve project-based learning, inquiry-based activities, or other opportunities for student choice. And Alfie Kohn is a very big supporter of giving students choices in many facets of their education. In building community, he advocates to establish a classroom culture where students feel valued and respected. He talks about using cooperative learning strategies and involving students in decision-making processes and recognizing everybody's individual and unique skills. He also encourages active reflection rather than passive reflection or no reflection at all. And he advocates against using grades as a motivator. He instead says that educators should provide meaningful feedback in the form of written or verbal feedback and encourage students to reflect on their own learning processes and make plans for how to improve if they fall short of expectations, instead of punishments, using a supportive system to help the students meet their education goals. And then constructive discipline is focusing on resolving conflicts through dialogue and understanding rather than through punitive measures. Some notable quotes that I was able to gather from Alfie Kohn's website that kind of encapsulate some of his beliefs are: the more we want our children to be, one, lifelong learners, genuinely excited about learning, two, emotionally healthy, and three, just generally good people, the more we should rethink the use of rewards, which goes right along with his discussions in his various texts about the faults and shortcomings of reward systems. He also says that punishment and reward process proceed from basically the same psychological model, one that conceives of motivation as nothing more than the manipulation of behavior, which is a good way to describe how he feels about those traditional motivation systems, is that he interprets them more as manipulating a child's freedom of choice and free will to get a desired behavior from them. And he advocates for a different and more thoughtful approach. He also says that the value of a book lies not so much in its conclusions as in the questions it raises and the subsequent discussions that it provokes. So we talk a lot in our literacy courses about the value of text and text selection. And so what Alfie Kohn is saying here is that it's not so much about the conclusions or the content that you're drawing straight out of the book as it is about the questions that you get from reading the book and the further learning and further digging that you want to do and the discussions that you have around it from what you learned from the book. It's that next step in the education process beyond what you gather from the surface level. And so that brings us to the We're Excited page. So in conclusion, Alfie Kohn's work challenges us to rethink the traditional approaches to education and to parenting, as a lot of his teachings are applicable to both. And he strongly advocates for fostering intrinsic motivation and building community, and focuses on implementing meaningful learning experiences as opposed to traditional knowledgeable sage in front of the classroom explaining the content to student models, the old school models of what we kind of envision as the traditional classroom. And he strongly advocates for creating environments where children aren't just thriving academically, but are growing as whole individuals. So thank you for following along with this presentation. I hope that it was useful, and if you have any questions or want to learn more, then hopefully the Works Cited can guide you to further information, or feel free to reach out to me, and I can discuss some of the findings that I came across in doing research for this project. Thank you.